Hello children, Mrs. Graham here. I am going to read A History of Britain, the Romans. Britain before the Roman invasion. About 2,700 years ago, people called the Celts came to Britain from Europe. Gradually, they mixed in with all the people who were already there. All those living in Britain became known as Britons. They were divided into groups called tribes. Here's a picture of a British settlement about 2,200 years ago. The cooking fire was kept going all the time. Here they're making baskets, grinding corn using a quern. And this map shows where some of the main British tribes lived. Many Britons lived in round houses like these, which were grouped in small villages. Houses were made of wood with mud plaster inside. British towns before the Romans. The Celts brought with them the skill of making iron tools and weapons. They built towns which became trading centers. Iron Age towns were dirty and smelly. Prisoners captured in war were sold as slaves. People came to the towns to swap food and animals from their farms for pottery, jewelry, silver, and iron goods. Some British tribes already traded with the Roman Empire, which covered most of Europe. They sold lead, gold, tin, wheat, slaves, cattle, hunting dogs, and pearls to the Romans. Here's a picture of a coin maker. Slaves were chained with iron collars like this. A British coin. Coins were first used in Britain about 2,150 years ago. The Romans attack Britain, 55 BC. On a late summer morning in 55 BC, a Roman fleet appeared off of the British coast near Dover. Consul Julius Caesar had brought an army of 10,000 men to see if Britain was worth invading. He also wanted to punish those British tribes who had been helping the Celts in Europe in their fight against the Romans. The Britons fought desperately, but they were no match for the well-trained Romans and soon fled. After his victory, Caesar left Britain. He returned with another army in the following year, but left shortly after. The Romans did not return to Britain for 97 years. At first, the Romans were afraid of thousands of British warriors waiting to fight them on the beach. It was not until the standard bearer of the 10th Legion jumped onto the water that the rest of the Roman soldiers followed. Okay. There's a picture of a Roman helmet and a British shield. Conquest, AD 43 to AD 60. In AD 43, the Roman Emperor Claudius decided to make Britain part of the Roman Empire. An army of 40,000 Roman soldiers landed at Richborough in Kent. This time, the Romans had come to stay. The Roman army swept the Britons aside and marched deep into the countryside. They made alliances with some of the tribes and conquered others. One by one, slowly they drove their enemies into the mountains of Wales and Scotland. Roman soldiers swam across the water in their armor to capture the island of Anglesey, the center of the Druid religion. The chief enemy of Rome, Caractacus, king of the Catuveliani, fought the Romans in Wales, but he was betrayed by the queen of the Brigantes, captured and sent to Rome as a slave. The Romans did not invade Scotland until AD 84. Although they won some battles, they could not conquer Scotland. Wherever they went, the Romans built roads and forts to control the Britons. There is a statue of Emperor Claudius. The Roman army. The Roman soldiers who invaded Britain were part of the best army in the world. They were better trained and armed than the wild Britons. The Roman army was divided into legions, each one containing roughly 5,000 legionaries who signed up for 25 years. Each legionary was highly trained with daily sword practice and marching. Legionaries were also trained to build roads, bridges, forts, and siege engines. A legionary wore heavy armor and had a large shield for protection. He carried 2 javelins and a sword, and a short, sharp sword. Each legionary took food, cooking gear, an axe, and 2 sharp stakes to help to build a wall round the camp at night. A Roman legionary with his armor and equipment. The Roman army also contained many auxiliaries. These were soldiers from conquered tribes all over the Roman Empire. Some auxiliaries had special skills. Archers. Many came from Syria. The Romans also used mounted archers. Slingers. Many came from the Balearic Islands in the Mediterranean Sea. The cavalry was used for scouting and carrying messages. They also chased fleeing enemy soldiers during battle. The Roman Emperor Claudius even had some elephants. Battle. Legionaries were taught to fight in different formations. This usually gave them an advantage over their enemies who were not well so organized. In battle, the whole army could fight as one man or split into smaller groups. Trumpets were used to give the signals. Cohort, about 480 soldiers. There were 10 cohorts in a legion. A standard bearer. Each legion had its own standard called an eagle. An experienced officer called a centurion was in charge of a century. About 80 soldiers. There were 6 centuries in a cohort. A Roman sword. British hill forts. The British tribes had built many hill forts. The Romans could not conquer Britain until they had captured those strongholds. There were different kinds of hill forts. Many had several ditches and walls round the hilltop. A maze sometimes hid the main gate. The tribe lived in huts built inside the walls. They brought their animals into the enclosure for safety when the fort was attacked. The body of this Briton was found at Maiden Castle in Dorset. A ballista bolt had passed through his body and lodged in his spine. Maiden Castle, one of the largest of over 3,000 hill forts in Britain. The Romans used large wooden catapults called ballistas to fire giant spears or bolts into a hill fort. The Romans locked their shields together to protect themselves from rocks and spears. The formation, which looked like a hard shell, was called a tortoise. That looks pretty unbreakable. Okay, just make sure. Okay, Boticas revolt, AD 60. The fighting continued for almost 20 years after the Roman invasion. The Romans won many victories, and it seemed as though nothing would stop them from ruling the whole country. Then in AD 60, the Iceni tribe, led by their queen, Boudicca, revolted. Boudicca's army burned the Roman cities of Colchester, St. Albans, and London. They destroyed an entire legion. Boudicca meets Suetonius. Other tribes joined Boudicca, and soon she had a huge army of 100,000 soldiers. Suetonius, the Roman governor of Britain, was in Anglesey fighting the Druids. Hearing news of Boudicca's army, he marched quickly south east with the 2 legions to meet the Iceni. Remember, they're the tribe. It's the queen who's named Boudicca. A great battle took place in the Midlands. Most of the British were killed, and Boudicca herself took poison rather than to be captured by the Romans. The rebellion was over. These skulls found in a London stream bed may have belonged to 3 of Boudicca's victims. That's crazy. It's a bit like Shakespeare when they have these poisons to kill themselves. The new Britons. After Boudicca's revolt, the Romans brought a new order to Britain. It became part of the Roman Empire, and more Romans began to settle there. Latin became the main language for administration. Everyone had to obey. The Romans built towns and cities which became centers of trade. Some Roman Britons grew wealthy by selling goods to the Romans. Roman governors were sent to rule Britain. The new laws brought peace, although Roman Britons now had to pay taxes to Rome. Everyone had to obey Roman laws and follow the Roman way of life. Soon, it was hard to tell who had been born in Britain and who was a foreigner. Britons became Roman Britons. British nobles were trained to rule their tribes in the Roman way. This brought peace and riches to many, although some Britons who continued to fight against their new rulers were captured and became slaves. The Roman army built good roads so the legions could march quickly to any part of the country to keep the peace. Hadrian's Wall. The Romans built forts in Wales and in the north of England to protect their land. The fierce, unconquered tribes hiding in the mountains and valleys of Scotland raided northern England again and again. The Emperor Hadrian decided to build a wall right across the country from Wall's End in Tyne, and Ware to Bowness in Cumbria to control them. Hadrian's Wall was finished in AD 128. The illustration shows what it may have looked like about AD 150. And the photograph shows the wall as it is today. Facts about Hadrian's Wall. 15,000 Roman soldiers guarded the wall, which was 120 kilometers long and about 4 meters high. Every 8 kilometers, there was a large fort which could hold up to 1,000 Roman soldiers. About every 1,500 meters, there was a small fort called a mile castle, which could hold up to 30 soldiers. Between the mile castles were 2 turrets, which could shelter the sentries. Sentries guarded the wall all the time. If the tribes attacked, the sentries ran for help or signaled with flags or fires.